Hi everybody, it's Dale from Bits of Nature. Let me give you a few tips on how I approach editing of the files that I've created through a digital scan of flowers. So here's a fairly typical one, captured some astilbe and some hosta leaves. What I've already done with this is done some basic editing. Oops, ignore that. I've already done some basic editing of the black background. So you'll notice, in fact, it looks quite black already, but it's not everywhere. And I can tell that if I go in and show in Photoshop here what the density or the colors are for the spots. You can see this background I've made 100% black. And I did that simply by going in and choosing a basic brush, 100% black, and even taking off the opacity. I'm using a Wacom touch sensitive tablet. So if I just was touching here, it depends on the pressure would determine the amount of blackness I get. So I can go in and make the background 100% black, increase the brush size. So I've painted this background all black all the way around. But you notice a couple things here. What's this little white dot doing up there? Well, if I zoom in, I'm going to go find that I've actually done some editing already. Let me go change my brush back to a normal size here. I'm making a soft little brush. And you'll notice if we look real close here, oh yeah, there's a lot of background here that I haven't edited. So my rough editing was just with a big wide brush to get all the way around the edges. But here's a little piece of dust or pollen that was captured. And you'll notice you have to get in pretty close to get the pixels because I've scanned this at such high resolution. It's 1200 dots per inch. I've already done the basic healing brush to clean up little bits of pollen or hair that got stuck on it. Every once in a while you'll see one that's still sitting out there. Those are pretty minor, as you can see. But what I've done is I've just made some reference point. This is where I started, and you can see I've done the fine editing all around this edge. So what I'm going to do now is go continue with that fine editing around the other way. And again, I've just got a basic brush here. I'm going to go use the paintbrush item. Now I can get rid of my reference marker here. You can see how I have to erase that slowly. And I can just, depending on the size I want, I can just kind of gently, very gently, and again, this is a touch sensitive tablet, much easier than with a mouse. I can gently brush here and just based on how much I'm pressing down will determine how much black is applied. So again, if I just barely touch, it would help if I had the opacity on. There we go. If I just barely touch it, you can see it just sort of gets a little darker, and you can watch the color scale on the information box. But if I press harder, I get a more 100% black background quicker. So this is a very soft edge, fuzzy little plant because it's kind of faded into the distance a little bit. So I'm using soft strokes here. Now I'm going to show you a little trick. Like say I want to keep track of where I left off. I just put a little white dot over there. Now in another area, I have some very sharp edges, like on the edge of this hosta blossom. So if I go zoom in there, you'll notice here I have a much sharper edge. So I have a couple choices. I have to go in with a very narrow brush, get my color back to black, get a very narrow brush and paint really close up fine to get that. Or if it's extremely sharp edged, I can change my brush to be a hard edge brush and do the same kind of effect. But I usually try to play it safe. I want to just zoom in really close and make sure that I'm just being extra careful with that brush. And again, right here I can push down pretty hard to get that nice fine edge. And then once I've done that fine edge, I can go around here, and this is now I can say I don't need the opacity on. I can just paint that out all the way, just because it's a nice solid area. I don't have to worry about being up close and personal. So I can do that a little bit there. So that's a couple ways that I handle some of the editing. Now one of the things you'll notice when you get really capturing some of these images, you'll see some interesting things like I've seen this little red line here. Well, what is that? Well, I've erased part of it already, so you can't see all of it. But there's some strange color effects, and fortunately it missed the flowers. Well, this was a bug, a little tiny fly or mite that was on the surface of the scanner. I brought it in with the flowers. And so when the scanner was going, he was actually moving, this little bug. And that caused different colors to show up as they move, because the scanner is taking the three different colors of the scale, red, green, and blue, in 3 different scanning elements that are capturing that. So this little guy moving created a red line, a blue, and a green line. Now if this was on the surface of the flower, the image, I would have to go in and try to do a healing brush and clean that up, and it does a pretty good job. I could have gone in and painted over that artificial point, and you can see it does a pretty good job of cleaning it up. This was actually off of the flower surface, so I could just paint it black and make that problem go away. But it's a good example of why you want to be really careful about what you bring in. And they say a little spider, little bugs, it's just inevitable you're going to get some of these. Now this one here, you can see here, there's another example, and again I got very lucky that they were way off to the side of the flowers and not in the surface, covering the surface of the flowers or leaves themselves. You can see here's a couple more spots that are, could use the healing brush on them. I can just kind of take care of those. Another example of being really careful when you take your flower images, that you're careful to get rid of all the pollen or shake the pollen off and set them down on the surface of the scanner very, very gently. You can dislodge pollen that's still stuck inside if you're not careful. You're going to get some inevitably. Even though I think I'm being very, very careful, I still get a lot. Now these flowers weren't very loaded. Some, like dahlias, are extremely heavily loaded, and obviously these hosta blossoms haven't opened yet, so no problem with them. They're just the nice buds. But anyway, it's a simple little flower, a little collage, a little arrangement. Now what I can do is, obviously the scaling of this isn't quite what I want, so I can go in here as well and change the canvas size. Image, resize, canvas size. So I can add a little bit of black to the left and the right, just trying to, get the proportions right. And I'll play around with that when I get close to finishing to get the portions where I want. I'll probably want to add a little bit to the top as well, just to give a little more space above it. Again, printing it, I can print it at any size I want and have that, put the spacing of the size, or crop it to the factor that I'm looking for. So this one I still need to add some to the borders left and right to make it the right proportions, but you get the idea. So anyway, I just thought I'd pass those tips on to you. And again, especially with these little white dots, can be helpful to have little reference points. You can see where you left off, especially when you've got a really high resolution image, as you can see this one is. I can go right in, and here's the other place where I had finished editing at one point. I've gone along this edge, got all the way down here, and now I'm going to these little nooks and crannies. And you can see it's a pretty high resolution edit that you're going in, and I'll sometimes zoom even farther to get really close. But it does give the advantage of, when printing these, they can be printed at a very, very large size. Because of the high resolution, it's 1200 dots per inch. I can easily print this at 4 times size and 6 without a stretch. Most printing, anything north of about 150 dots per inch printing, is pretty high resolution. 300 you can't see, and printers can't do typically. So again, I can go 4 times this without even worrying at all about pixelization. I mean, again, when you zoom in, it's not when you get pretty close before you start seeing individual pixels. Now they're starting to show up. Now they're there finally, but I'm zoomed way far in. Anyway, I thought I'd pass those tips on to you. Appreciate you watching. Again, it's Dale at Bits of Nature. Thank you.